Hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're happy that you
She's still
tuned
laughing.
in. I'm one of your hosts, Latasha Hewitt. And of course, I never come here alone. I've got the wonderful, best, awesome crew in all the land.
Wow, this feels like deja vu, like we've been here before.
Hold on, it's like
we
we've been
just
here
left
before.
you.
Hey, guys. Hey.
Happy
Happy
Sunday.
Labor Day weekend. Happy Labor Day weekend.
Sunday.
Yes.
Mhm.
And all my labors.
So, how's everybody doing?
Real good.
Pretty
Real
good.
good.
Pretty
Doing
good.
well.
All right.
Doing well.
Doing well. Yes. Of course, this is a holiday weekend, and we like to usually let the cast enjoy themselves, various activities. But we do want to know what's going on now. Anything happening now that we want to share? Of course, it may be old news to you all by the time you see this, but anything of note that the team wants to talk about today before we get started on our topic.
Anything? Any current events? You mean?
Yes.
It's time for us to pull out our prophetic gifts and
That's right.
talk about what's currently happening.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring up. Okay, go ahead, Charles.
No, I was going to say, that the recent case of that police brutality, it escapes me what state that was in, or town that was in.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, someone was, recording a police stop or reaction to this gentleman who was being put under arrest, and the beating was horrific.
Yeah.
That these police officers put on this young man, and it's not to say, well, for whatever crime that he was being arrested or picked up for. I mean, it's quite possible he did it, and if he did it, he deserved to be arrested by the police. However, I think that the kind of beating that he took from those police officers, again, does not help our police departments, because there are some great police officers, male and female, out there that do a horrific job. They put their jobs on the line. But it's these characters that makes it bad for good police officers and good policing. And again, it's put before us. And this is what scares people. When you see those lights in your rearview mirror and you're being pulled over, these kind of images remain in your mind, and you're a little afraid.
It should also be noted that, and while it shouldn't matter, in America it always does, that this was a white man who was being beaten by these officers. And every year there are more white people killed by police officers than black people every year. And not proportionally speaking, but there is. And so that the real issue here is not simply racism, but it is the abuse of authority under the color of law. That is the question. And race amplifies it. But it's when you give a person power, and that power is not under proper governance and restraint, that's when it becomes an issue. And we need to attack it from that end, and not simply from the racist end,
Agreed.
Guys, that's one subject we probably need to cover one day, the love and hunger for power, because we see it everywhere and how destructive it is, even in the church. We need to talk about that.
Yes. I've seen ministers competing with each other for power and for positions.
I wanted to bring out, all these storms and how just rain and flooding all over, causing disaster. I was looking, which state was it, guys? Yes, Texas. That severe storm, and just, the cars just being taken down the street. People are missing. It's just from rain. No, it hadn't been 40 days. No one even going in the ark, but that kind of rain in a short amount of time just taking out. This earth is really mourning with the pains.
There are still climate deniers. There are people say, no, this is nature being nature, and that we had nothing to do with it. But I think those that live in those very vulnerable areas are starting to think maybe we have something to do with climate change. There are storms popping up in places that have never popped up in that severity. I think we need to pay attention to this. If you think climate change is not happening, then you must be on Earth too.
Yeah. Right. One of the things I'd like to bring up, which is we've seen it happen with Facebook, and we're now seeing it happen with Twitter, where there are whistleblowers that are
Mhm.
coming out.
Mhm.
Of
Mhm.
course, we know that social media is good, but it also has this twist to it. Where, we're talking about democracy. We're talking about
Oh, yes,
what they
yes.
allow to be to be displayed, or what can be said. So, one of the things that we have to do is to be careful of not just even what our children watch uh, on social media, but also what we look at as social media that can actually change our thought process if we
Mhm.
continue to look at it. So I see that the whistleblowers are coming out for Twitter just the same way they were coming out for Facebook.
Yep. We'll see more and more of that happening.
Yep.
And of course, we wanted to talk about, because we kind of shared it with each other. We saw that the Shiloh Church in Chicago,
Oh,
Mhm.
pastor
yeah.
John Boston, recently announced that they are going to start tuition free. It's funny, we were just talking about this on a previous show about the possibility of that happening, and here we have a church that is saying
Yeah.
we have voted as a church that tuition will be free
Wow.
for
Amen.
all their students. And what I like about what I'm seeing, one, we feel like that's a bold stance to take, because we've talked about it several times. We hear people talking about we should, we should, we should. They're stepping out on faith and doing it. Of course, everyone's asking how, everyone wants to know how. But when you see the amount of support that they're getting from other people just because they took this stand, people are like, how do I donate? They're nowhere near Chicago, all over the world, just wanting to
Wow, that's great.
so into something like this because they finally see a church that's trying to do it, at least.
Is it tuition free, GP, or is it sensitivity to people's capacity to pay tuition?
Well, I saw it was a scholarship. And so I don't know if
Okay.
it's actually completely free or not, but it would be deeply subsidized. The cost would be covered. I don't know whether it's 100% or a certain percentage, but there are communities that will have students who will be able to now attend because of this generous scholarship and bold decision
Yes.
by
Still
And,
very nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and for
Yeah,
those of you,
Elizabeth had a little something to say
yeah,
there. She was
I was
trying to
going
Yes.
to.
explain,
Please.
but you're
the.
just talking over her. So
She's like, when I'm bigger, this whole thing is going to be changed.
I was going to tell everybody that we have. This is not the apostolic hour. That is not anybody speaking in tongues in the background. But that's GP's little
Our
girl.
seventh member, yeah.
You all know I've been talking about this from the beginning of the show. To see John Boston pastor come out and do something like this is it's heartwarming for me. I don't even care if it doesn't work later. Start
Yeah.
something now,
Yeah.
and
That's
look
a
at the
good thing.
possibilities,
oh
because you
yeah,
can always work on top of something that
Mhm.
will that other minds will come together now and expand. It might have been born from his people, but then this thing should be able to spread uh, um, nationwide, if anything, through the regional conferences first, or
Mhm.
if that
Mm.
should be.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
hope everybody starts copying what they
Yeah,
have done.
this is
sure.
definitely
Yeah.
that would be
something
Yeah.
worth
great.
emulating for
Yeah, that'd be
sure,
great.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So here
All
we
right.
go.
All right, guys. So we have a topic. um a topic that
Unusual.
we are, yes, that we love to discuss. And of
Mm.
course, we're not live, but we definitely want you to comment in the chat, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. We really want to hear your thoughts on this subject as
Italian.
Sally meditates prior to
No, she said we weren't live, so I thought I would
you're
assume
dead.
the posture.
Um,
A
but no,
live.
it's definitely a topic that we know exists, issue that we know exists and is very prevalent, but not always talked about. And the upset, we love to talk about those kind of things. That's like the recipe for exactly the kind of topics we want to cover. So Marlena, will you please share with the people today what we are going to be discussing?
Absolutely. Thank you, my senior host. We will be discussing today pornography and child addiction.
Mm.
It's very important for us to understand that our children are heavily exposed to pornography. I was reading this article called The Victims of Pornography through Christianity.com. And it stated it was the personal testimony of a little girl who was 8 years old at the time. Her father forced her to look at pornographic pictures because he wanted her to perform these acts.
Mm.
She says, I went along with it, not knowing at the time what it would do to me. Then she said, for years, her father raped her using these pictures. At the age of 16, she had a sexually transmitted disease, and she thought, I might die to this disease. Pornography has ruined my life.
Mm.
Pornography is believed by many to be a victimless crime that is just between you and your camera. However, studies show that pornography does inspire crimes such as rape, incest, molestation, violence and aggression towards women, child pornography, and sexual promiscuity. It destroys families through divorce and separation, and destroys and distorts the children's view of intimacy. It demeans women by forced or perverse sexual activities, and it advocates prostitution, exhibitionism, and voyeurism. If you don't know what voyeurism is, it is the use of looking at objects and things to get a sexual arousal, and it is deemed as a normal behavior. Pornography, in its definition, is the use of printed or visual material containing explicit description or display of sexual organs or activities intended to stimulate erratic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. The word pornography comes from the Greek word porn, meaning harlot, a prostitute, a whore, or graphos, meaning a writing or depiction. When we put it both together, it is a depiction or description of licentiousness, licentiousness or lewdness, a portrayal of erotic behavior designed to cause sexual excitement. The porn addiction is, in its theory, when you can't stop looking at it even if you wanted to. That's porn addiction.
Mm.
And the obsession gets to the point that it interferes with your work, relationships, and other parts of your daily family. What happens with pornography is that it stimulates the release of a hormone called dopamine, neurotransmitter in the brain, that helps us to feel pleasure as a part of the brain's reward system. Sex, shopping, some people love chocolate, smelling cookies baking in the oven, all of these trigger the release of dopamine or gives you a dopamine rush. It is considered to be the pathway of pleasure. We now live in a very highly sexually stimulated society where sex is promoted everywhere we go. It's in the commercials, it's in the dress, it's in our clothing attire, it's in the songs, it's in the movies, it's even in cartoons, it's everywhere that you go, it's in the art. Sex is highly promoted. Diane Andrews, she's a program manager for personal responsibility and education program. She describes that in the brain of the teenager, that this dopamine causes a greater excitement, gives back greater rewards and emotions in these new experiences. So to a teen, this rush of dopamine makes them feel good and causes them to be even more addicted to pornography than the adult. Because of this, their brains are more at risk to addiction. It says the increased time spent on social media, internet awareness, children have become more susceptible to porn sites. One article said that 70% of our children view pornography on the internet while they're doing their studies in the library, in school, in church. Oh, help me in this place. Wherever they are, they go right to these sites. Now, I don't know if any of us have been exposed to how these little things just pop up on your screen. Now, it's if you've ever been there before, you know, it will pop up again. But I remember one time on my screen, I never look at that stuff. And something popped out. I said, Jesus, get this thing off of my screen. Ew. I don't even want to describe what it was doing, but it just popped up. And so to these young children, these curious minds, they are exposed to so much more at this time. It said initially, you know, children are also, you know, they have this peer pressure. So oftentimes they are inspired by others. And initially they may feel a little shame, lack of self-confidence, or even an uncertainty about their own sexual expression. But after you go for just a little while, there becomes an excitement to the child that they then cannot let it go. But one thing I learned in my research is said that this pornography addiction affects special children, children who are exposed to issues in the family, exposed to children who suffer from depression, children who are diagnosed with ADHD, children who feel isolated or stressed. They are the ones to more likely become addicted to porn. It starts as low as the age of 11 years old. Now, I've heard of stories even younger, but the majority can go as low as 11 years old. Now, pornography is prominent in the church. It is stated that it is one of the church's greatest problems. They did a poll with Focus on the Family. Some of you have heard that ministry, Focus on the Family. And it said 17% of Christian adults visit the porn sites. And pornography has become one of the highest money-making businesses in the world, being $5 to $6 billion. The church embraces pornography. To some, it stimulates their marriage, even though I told you earlier, it causes separation and divorce because there is a violation to the marriage. I want to say to my colleagues today, or ask you this question: is pornography a sin? Is it something that goes against God? How can it be wrong when I'm just by myself having my own pleasure? I'm not married. I'm not with anyone. I'm not committing adultery. Is pornography a sin?
That's a question.
Go ahead, Tally. That's you.
Yes.
I'm with you, Tally. Go right ahead.
I guess the question then becomes, how does one define it existentially?
Right.
I mean, for example, if I told you about this guy talking about some woman that he wasn't married to, describing her breast and describing, you know, the meeting of her thighs and all that, is that pornographic? Because if it is, then the Song of Solomon is pornographic.
Well, yeah.
Gotcha, Marlena.
Yeah. Is it a sin?
You don't have me there. That's that's between the husband and the wife.
No, the couple in Song of Solomon are not married.
Well,
listen. So a man thinketh.
Yeah.
So, but my understanding, looking at the definition, because, you know, when you think porn, there's just one thing comes to mind, but looking at how it's distinguished as, you know, these acts are meant to cause sexual arousal. When I think about the Song of Solomon, I feel like his intent was not necessarily that, even though that may have been what was going on with him. I think it was more of him showing his adoration for and appreciation of beauty there. So that would be the caveat for me. Like, I don't think that was meant to when it was written to arouse.
Are you kidding me now?
So it wasn't anything to do with lust, nothing to do with.
I mean, I think he was I think he was definitely expressing his appreciation for what he was seeing, but it, I don't necessarily view that as pornography. I mean,
Well,
when I read it, I'm
there's a couple of different things we have here, and that is, first of all, the association with desire and arousal as being sinful is one thing. The other thing is whether or not, you look at the Song of Solomon. This man is clearly speaking the language of arousal. In getting married, arousal is a part of the package. If you are not aroused by the person you marry, I suggest you not marry them. It's there's nothing wrong with that. The problem with pornography is that it objectifies a person so that a person who should be related to becomes an object that gets used. And that's where pornography becomes evil, in one man's opinion.
True,
But,
but but
but
pornography too is the use of materials that you visually view to stimulate the mind. So
Hmm.
if in the Song of Solomon he's thinking on the love of his person,
Yeah.
for you who are married and have been married, you remember last night and you say to your wife or your husband, I can't wait to get back home to you, because you remember, it's in your
Hmm.
mind. That's not pornography. That's the enjoyment of the expression of sexual intimacy between two people.
hey, it's also gonna
Yeah.
be where your mind is at, because you could read novels, right? And the novels are telling a story about someone else, or whether it's fiction or whatever the case may be. I think the carefulness in all of this is what happens to you when you read it or when you watch it. And I think that's we're blaming the thing and calling it porn, but the thing is, what does porn actually do to you? And I think that if we can get away from saying that labeling it as a sin, why don't we try to figure out what does this actually do? And then we can go back and say, okay, this is not good. A little wine is good for the stomach, but then it also can drunken you. I mean,
Well, think on this script. I'm sorry, go finish.
no, go, no, no,
Sorry,
no,
Pat.
go ahead.
Uh,
I think I'm just tackling it from the standpoint of sin. And pornography is widespread. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. Many times we think of pornography, it depends where you came from. I mean, or how you grew up. Pornography, the first time I've seen pornography at what's fifth grade? How old are you in fifth grade?
10.
10.
10. Okay, let's look at 10 years old. And I preached about this at Hands of Place the other day. We were walking to school and somebody threw it out in the garbage. And all of us were walking to school that day. We all pulled it out of the garbage and we were sharing it to each other. And when we got to school, we hid it under the lockers, and each person, and it was a planned thing that each person will go out and look at it when they go to the bathroom. I mean, these are things we were talking about at fifth grade. And that's not what the kids have now. That's not their phones. That's not technology. We're looking at magazines back then that your uncle had or somebody threw away.
Yeah.
What does it do to you? The sad part about it, and I don't want to get to the end, but the thing is that I remember at
Yeah.
10 years old, I remember those pictures now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm 52 years old.
Yeah.
So there's a big impact that happens when you're exposed, not just to magazines. I'm going back 70s, okay, but also to what you read. We had Judy Blume books. I remember the girls used to read it, but then the guys used to read it also. So it's what's formulated in your mind when you watch it or when you see it or when you read it.
Let's go a little bit farther. I agree with Tally that pornography is a sin. Let me go to the scripture of Matthew chapter 19. One commentator brought up this point, verses 4 through 6. And he answered and said to them, have you not read this? He who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Pornography separates the couple because whomever is doing it, whether it is the male or female, with multiple use becomes so addicted to it that they desire it more so than the partner.
Sure.
It separates what God intended to be between the husband and the wife. So it's almost like there's another lover in the room. And so it breaks up marriages. If it was a good thing, if it was a plus, why does it destroy families? Why does pornography cause this divorce and separation, and it affects the children and their mentation? I also want to share with you Matthew chapter 5 verses 27 through 28, because whatever God gives to us is a blessing to us, right? It doesn't harm. And it says in Matthew 5, 27 through 28, it says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her already committed adultery with her in his heart.
But what if it's tantric? What if it's something you're learning?
Let me finish.
What if you're doing research?
Adultery. Listen to this. If you're in in a medical profession and you're looking at the body, that's something different. But listen, pornography it goes against chastity, virtue of a person. It demeans the people who are participating in it.
That's what I was.
Many of us have seen pictures, movies, videos. There is so much vulgarity in pornography. So it diminishes your chastity. It decreases morality by exploiting the person or exploiting yourself. It causes you to live in a land of fantasy that will cause you to even make your sexual relationship with your spouse seem unpleasurable, because now your mind desires the vulgar over the pure.
There's a lot of go ahead, Charles.
Oh, well, go ahead and make your comment, because
No, I'll hold. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to try to steer this back to child pornography, or children's addiction to pornography, and I think we need to deep dive into why that is. Why is that? The child is born into the world, and they are led either one way or the other as they grow and learn their society. So, as parents, as teachers, as educators, as physicians, I think we have a responsibility. Part of the problem, I'm not going to say it's the problem, but part of the problem is that we have failed as a society to teach our children when they are very young what sex really is.
Let's start from
We
the pulpit,
failed.
Chuck. Let's start from the pulpit.
It's a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about in their homes, because they feel like, I got to be descriptive and whatever. I remember in high school, I didn't go to church school. I went to high school in Philadelphia. Simon Gratz, I'll just, shout out to the old high school. We got most of our sexual education from our public schools and wasn't talked about at home. Not a subject we want to talk about, So we got the basics of sexuality in our schools. Now, the perversion of that, which I would classify as abuse, that's sexual abuse, when you mischaracterize what human beings do and how we define pleasure when it comes to sexuality. That's where we have gone wrong, as a society. And some of the children that are caught up in this, I mean, in a lot of cases, I would venture to say it's not their fault. They've been wrongly exposed.
Yeah.
It's been a mission creep since they start reading and writing and seeing things. We just have a society that any Christ-centered family or person needs to try extra hard to guard their children against the perversion of sexuality. Sexuality is not a bad thing. Sex is not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
But these
Absolutely.
children are learning early without corrective measures
Right.
what sex is and what it isn't. And I think we need to consider that and be aware of that.
Absolutely.
That's right. And sex should not be tabooish. I mean, even when you you speak to sexual expression between the couples, the couples don't want to talk about it. It's like, but that's what was given by God. That should be a wonderful thing, and we should teach it to our children. So much so now we can transition into this. Our children are sexting. Is sexting a form of pornography? And for
Yes.
those who don't understand what sexting is,
Tally
maybe
said-
I should
Tally
tell
said
you.
yes.
Let me tell you what sexting is. Sending sexually explicit digital images, videos, text messages, and emails through your phone of one's body part to another. Yes, our children are doing that. Absolutely. Yes, our Adventist children are doing it. I'm talking to the parent who's not my child. My child would never do that.
Right.
They're the very ones that are doing it. All right. Sending or receiving naked or partially naked images to their little boyfriend or little girlfriend, the person that they like. And so they want to be accepted by even more by just showing their body parts. Now, it's women, little girls and boys do it, but a study showed that the girls do it a lot because they feel the pressure from the little boys. You know, I want to see you. I love you so much. I want to see you. So you find our girls sending pictures of their breast or their vaginal pictures so that it will stimulate an arousal with the little kid on the phone. Is this a form of pornography?
Absolutely.
Well, yes, but there are greater questions to ask. And that is why, for example, you're saying they're feeling pressure from the little boys. As a former little boy, I would like to speak up and say
Go
that
ahead, speak up, brother.
they feel, like the Bible speaks of, sin comes when you are drawn away of that which is within you. They're feeling pressure from within themselves to be accepted, and
I
the
agree
little
with
boy
that.
becomes the external source of acceptance. And so the thing becomes, how do you empower people so that sex becomes their servant and not their master? What are young people looking for when they send these pictures? Everybody wants to look good and be admired. So how did they get to a place where they are doing that? And what I'm concerned about is, when you say, is it sin or not? There are greater questions to ask, and that is, what is leading this person here? Because the moment you say it's sin, then the next thing is you moralize the situation, and the person feels wrong and guilty and ashamed.
And a shame. They're good.
And then you give it a power
right.
that it becomes almost inescapable. It haunts you. And our young people, let me tell you, religious communities are having some of the greatest struggles because of the constraints and the restraints that have been artificially placed on people for having very natural feelings.
Right.
And
But it's how we control our natural feelings. I could have a natural feeling toward GP, and he's a married man, but I have to have self-control with my natural feelings.
I mean, but before that, you have to make sure that a person can own them, and without feeling like, if I own this, everybody's going to put me out of the community. And we speak the language of condemnation, censorship, and shame before we speak the language of understanding and acceptance. And that concerns me when we talk about something like this.
But I think Chuck said it right when he talked about education. Many times we shame our children first before we educate them. My children grew up in the internet era. My children grew up in the era where they do sexting, but they don't look at, we call it sexting. They don't call it sexting. They call it something else because we have not taught them. As kids, they're going to be curious anyway. It doesn't matter if you're born in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it doesn't matter. There's a curiosity that's there that when we as parents see it, we ought to be able to curtail it. When we grew up in church, the pastor used to spell the word XES so that the kids would not be able to understand what it is that he was
Right.
talking about from the
Right.
pulpit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
ignorant.
meanwhile, it is already it's already uh uh it has already been imprinted what you saw, um or what is it that you heard. And I know pornography is not necessarily listening, but definitely what you read.
Oh yeah, it is.
Well, true. It,
Yeah, it can be all.
Where do you think those
well, you're right.
900 phone lines come from?
Right.
Mhm.
I
Right.
mean,
No, but you're right. I have over the past couple of years. If
wait a
you,
minute. Are you gonna confess something, Pat? Before
not
we
yet,
go
I'll
any
tell you
further?
when. When
Okay, all right.
over the past couple of years, working with young people,
Mhm.
working with teenagers, it's hard to come to them with the, that is this a sin or not? It's difficult. Matter of fact, you know what we come to them on? What if this thing gets out? What if more people see it? What
Right.
if we don't even tackle it from the standpoint of what it's actually doing to them?
Right.
We shame them by saying, okay, what if when it's in the
Or what if you
World
get
Wide Web, everybody gets it after that. If it's in the
You'll never
cloud,
get a job now. Everybody.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
what we
What if
tell
you get
them.
pregnant?
Guys,
Right.
it's true.
Become
It's
pregnant.
true.
That's
I've
true.
seen that when kids put their body parts on the World Wide Web, it goes out there and their faces are there. You see their
Yes, but
penises and
but
their
that doesn't mean
breasts.
anything. That doesn't mean they don't consider it pornography. Do you
Yeah,
understand what I'm
okay,
saying?
Right.
listen.
Mhm,
Listen. Let me
mhm,
read this.
mhm.
We must understand that when they put things out that the law officials are looking at them, it is considered child pornography. Let me read this. A 13-year-old boy in Middletown, Ohio is facing felony pandering obscenity charges after taping a sex act and showing it to his friends at a skating party. Yes, the kid needs to be punished, but we don't need our 13 and 14 years old charged with child porn and lumped in with adult pedophiles and labeled sex offenders. There's another case.
I don't know what that was to represent right there.
This is to represent that when our children are taking pictures of themselves, they put it on the internet, that it is seen as child pornography and they're being arrested and put in jail.
Yeah,
So we
I think the key though, Marlena, is not, that those are facts, but we're talking about that's the fact that they're engaging in this is a symptom of a deeper problem or a deeper issue that they're trying to address. So if we can get them to deal with that first, instead of putting the facts ahead of them, and shaming them, even though they may have low self-esteem and this is what they do as an outlet. Let's address the low self-esteem so that they won't even view pornography as an outlet for that. I think sometimes we go hard on the consequence, but we don't get to the root of what's going on inside our child that's making them want to do that. And if we can get to that, we can help curtail. But sometimes listing the effects of what they're doing doesn't always work for kids because now they feel bad about how they feel.
Shame.
And we have to validate it's okay to feel this way. It's okay to have these things, but here's a healthier way to manage it as opposed to just sharing with them everything that could go wrong, I guess is
And you
what
don't
I'm
want them
hearing
to
from
hide
this.
it. You see, that's the problem. You
Right.
don't want them to hide it.
You want them to talk
I
to you about it. Yeah.
when we're watching Moses, the 10 Commandments, and the lady from Ethiopia comes up to Moses, and he is also very wise, and all of that, and I know that we may not look at it like that, but that was some of the first connotations of my kids at 8 and 9 years old. Like, what does she mean by that? They were smarter than where we are when we were coming to. But here, I didn't take the time to explain it to them. I told them how much God is displeased and their penis will fall off.
Yeah.
If they keep on,
Exactly.
I mean, and now I did say that, and I should not have. But but now we have shamed them.
God help me, somebody.
that they'll now hide. They become shameful of it, and all that we've told them in the beginning that it's a God thing, that this is a gift from God. they can no longer look at it or explain it as a God's gift when we have turned it into the most terrible thing in the world for them to have natural feelings.
Right. And that is the failure. And I want to
Indeed.
acknowledge what Marlena is bringing to the table. This is a major, serious problem.
It is.
And it's right before us. It's right in front of us. And we just keep pushing it aside, kicking it to the, oh, they'll be okay. No, they won't be okay. Because what's added to that is the abuse that adults introduce to children. Now, they have been groomed through pornography. They've been groomed through the exposure. So they're an easy catch for someone who's grooming a child to sexually abuse that child. And so, you know, we as a society, I'm just going to say it, you know, and I'm part of society, we have failed on this.
That's right.
And we need to turn it around. We need to say, you know, right now, even those that are listening, right now, even if you haven't talked to your young children, after this show,
talk to them.
Start talking to them.
That's right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And let them know, hey, I know what you're doing on your phone. I know you have, you know, and tell them some stories about your own experiences. Because if we don't try to create an off-ramp for these kids, they're going to become perverted adults.
Absolutely.
With suits on.
Hold on, Chuck.
And driving nice cars.
Which they would think is normal.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Which they would think is normal. And that's the hard part about it. Marlene, let me go to sexting really quick, because I feel that I see it. I've seen it all summer. This is one of the reasons why we didn't allow phones at camp, because what guys and girls do is that they take pictures of each other,
right,
and send it to other people, which is the crime. That is really where the crime is. The crime is another part of the crime is that it's not their phones; it's their parents' phone. Right. So if their parents are the adults and they are receiving pictures of sex pictures from other kids, it's actually their equipment and not their child's equipment. So that's where it gets dicey.
Let me share this one thing with you, specifically for you, Marlena, because you bring up some good points about the fact of access to this by our young people. I was in elementary school. That was way back.
Yeah.
Before electricity.
The 80s.
I came to school.
Hey, I was born before the 80s.
And my elementary school classmate showed me something after school that I could not believe. It was a toy of two adults having sex. This was before smartphones, before internet, before all of that.
Chuck, now, I know which one it is. A little thing you go like this.
Okay, no illustration.
Yeah, Pat, let's. Okay,
wait, manual action.
We don't have. We do not have any.
It was a keychain. No, go ahead.
Yeah. And everybody was worried about me.
Yeah. Now here is the point again. That child picked that up from somebody, an adult, another child, or from their home.
Absolutely.
So I come back to where we've got to address this. Are we going to do away with smartphones? Never happen. Are we going to do away with access to internet? It ain't going to happen.
That's right.
Okay, you can put all kinds of, lock software. I worked with one parent who wanted to lock her iPhone down, and she did all the locks, and that child found out how to unlock that phone. So she was able to continue what she was doing. The root of the problem is that we have failed our young people by just saying to them, this is your beautiful body. This is what God made you for. This is what God allows for you. And that it's okay to be sexual under certain circumstances. We just need to take the blame.
What are the circumstances?
Well, when I say
yeah,
I'm pointing towards marriage. You have a clear understanding. and you have marriage, and you're
And
having sexual relationship with,
and I
and
wanted
that's
to,
traditionally what we teach.
yeah, I wanted to push back on that just a little bit. We are sexual before we marry.
Yes.
And I think what we're talking about, that
Right.
the act of sexual intercourse is reserved for marriage, but we are sexual
Oh, of
before
course.
we
Of
marry. And
course.
so we have to embrace and accept the fact that we are, first of all, we're sensual, that we communicate through our senses, and then
Right.
secondly, that translates into sexuality.
Mhm.
And we have to embrace that. I go back to the Song of Solomon again, because it's in the Bible for a reason. Now, I know Tasha, when we talked about before, Tasha, extrapolated theologically from it and said, well, no, it doesn't mean that. It is the Song of Solomon is a book
Hold on,
that doesn't have.
I'm looking it up now. Which verse? Which verse
Uh,
is it?
oh, it's called the whole book.
I understand. I want the one that
the whole dadgum book.
I want to know the one you like.
Chapter 4 really becomes graphic.
Okay.
And of course, the Victorian King James Version is doing everything it can to sanitize that. The book does not even have the word God in it.
That's true.
All it has in it is this couple. They are unmarried, chasing each other around the garden, trying to figure out how to get each other's attention. It is acceptable. It is an exquisite portrayal of that aspect of life that makes life worth living.
Hold on, guys. I'm reading
zest
it right
and
now.
desire, and desire is a part of our humanity that needs to be properly embraced and understood. Remember, God says, "I will give you the desire of your heart." If you don't understand it, you ain't gonna get much in life. Do you not realize that desire is the thing that identifies us most with God? God has no need, but God has desire. And so we have to learn how to enshrine that in a way that will allow a child to accept the fact that he feels things and wants to act upon those things, even if it is not permissible to do so at the time. And what I'm afraid of is that the way we couch these things and the way we present these things, it presents such a level of impediment, fear, and shame that for example, the question, is it a sin? Let's use another measurement. To what degree is this healthy? To what degree is this not healthy?
Here we go.
It's not healthy.
Well, there we go, Marley. That's the end of that.
Not.
You got to go back to the degrees. You got to
the
go
word
back
is the degree, Marley.
Of what's
Guys,
healthy and what's not.
It's when you look at what pornography does. I know we are talking about making sure the children understand that there's no shame, that they feel sexual. I agree with that.
It's
the same with
you have to, but you have to define now what you mean by pornography for a kid. Are you saying if a child looks at a picture of a naked person, or let's say somebody in a swimming suit?
No. Remember, the definition is it's used for erratic arousal. So they're getting that sexual rush.
I remember,
it's not just looking at a picture. So, oh, that's nice. I see. You're getting that. You're getting that sexual arousal.
I remember looking at the Spiegel catalog when I was a kid.
Sunday.
Beg pardon? Sunday.
It comes in Sunday. Just go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It comes in the newspaper on Sunday.
No, we couldn't look at it on Sunday in those days. But I remember looking at the catalog, and they would have the women in there. I remember thinking that the word lingerie was lingerie because it made me linger over the pictures, literally. And the people who took those pictures had no intent to arouse me, none whatsoever. But when I saw it, I was aroused. That's now. So when you say a picture,
do you go there? Do you go there constantly to get your arousal? I mean, you can have a natural reaction, but now does it feed you?
The point that I did a little bit there. The point that I'm making, because let me tell you, I never shopped at Spiegel's, but I like their catalog. The point that I'm making is that what I needed was for someone to come along and explain to me and help me understand the validity of what I was feeling and why I found those pictures attractive and what my desire is meant for, rather than somebody to come to me and say, "Now you know that's wrong."
Right. No, that's not what I'm speaking of. You can have a natural
I'm talking about
reaction.
just our language,
I got you. You can have we're human and sensual. As you said, we have emotions. And so you can see things and have an emotional response. But pornography is when you feed something, it leads to an addiction. So the effects of pornography, I know we need to go to and do a part 2 because I got a lot of good stuff to say. The effects of pornography are not good. It doesn't lead you to it doesn't lead you to a better response. You might have a good feeling, but it doesn't lead you to a good place.
I guess what I'm saying is the use of a word attached to an action or a thought or a feeling might limit our ability to grow and cultivate our children in a healthy way. For example, if you say pornography is anything that is graphic, that that stimulates sexual interest, therefore it is bad. I sense that that will be less healthful for our children than to say.
I think that's different. I mean, when I'm looking at the definition of pornography, and it's saying explicit description
Yes.
or display of sexual organs or activity, that's slightly different than a woman in a bathing suit.
I think
You
we
know,
all
Yes.
recognize, yeah.
yeah.
I'm
So
saying we have to just enlarge
right,
the way we approach this and say, is it wrong? Is it bad? Is it good? Is it right? And say, let's understand some things.
right.
I think that we have to let people know don't touch the fire. You said fire's pretty. We need warmth. We need it. I mean, it's so beautiful. But let them know that when you touch it, you get burned. There are a lot of things that happen, and you can tell them in love. You can say, listen, as young people, you're going to experience these feelings. These are natural feelings, but it's how you control what you feel. Because one issue is that we see our parents do it. Ding, 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 ding. You don't think they see what's
To see your
on your
parents do what?
phone or
Oh. I
in
thought you meant
pornography.
seeing
You
your parents
you
do
don't
it.
realize that the example is right in front of you, but is the parents are hiding out, but the children see. And as I said, it's everywhere. They can't avoid it. And so we're talking about child pornography, but we know is very strong in the church. And so if it's strong in the household, it affects the marriages, it affects the children, it brings destruction because of what it does. It's not just merely looking at pictures and having a normal sexual feeling. It is when it is hardcore, you use it to get that erratic behavior because you want it. And now you go to it for your sexual preference.
You know what? I would rather. It's going to be hard to discuss what is pornography, especially in this day and age with technology, and what's right and wrong. Because even as you're saying that, there's some other things that's out there. I mean, even when you watch some Disney movie shows, it's capturing. And I know exactly what you mean. I'm not trying to, Marlene, I'm not trying to bypass this at all. I think if we look at the effects again, then we can back up. Pornography can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It's unrealistic. We're talking about the definition that you gave. Some of those things are unrealistic.
Yeah.
Our children who see that expect to be like that model, male or female. You begin to have shame because your stuff don't look like their stuff. It doesn't.
I've never had a lamp like that.
Yeah, or a bookshelf back there like
Yeah.
that. Right. Oh, tally, and then we end up having this, and I think you gave it to us in the green room. You start to isolate yourself from family. You isolate yourself from friends because of the shame part of it, because there's no outlet for you to even have the discussion. Can't have the discussion at home, church. So the discussion that you're going to have is with peers, and the peers whose family don't really care about what they do. Then you start to normalize it. Chuck said it before he left, that you end up growing up in suits, and you end up it becomes a part of your being mature. And then now the next generation This is where we are right now, because the next generation doesn't see it as something that deep. Marlena, let me just say this. We have caught kids sexting, and the parents have said, that's why you're suspending them?
Yeah,
Are you
they see
understanding
it
what I'm
as
saying?
minor. They don't even
They
see
look at
it.
it as a minor thing. It's not that deep.
I'm not sure if they're doing. I mean, I don't know, because suspending does not address the issue.
Right, you're right about that. And Tally, what I'm really saying is that the parents don't see the need. Forget the suspension side of it. The parents don't see that it's that
There's a
deep
problem.
So
of a problem.
there's their daughter's breast online. This it's okay. Full flesh.
No,
No,
that's not
no,
what they're
no.
saying. That's not what they're saying.
Nah,
If they're
They just
saying
don't think they should
to
be removed from school because of it.
or they don't
Yeah.
think it yeah, right. Or
We are,
the
as a
punishment.
people, we are law oriented, and and the Bible speaks about the law brings wrath. We're law oriented, and we're control oriented, and we're more interested in controlling your behavior than understanding how you got there. And the point that I'm trying to make is that I caught you doing this, now I'm going to suspend you. That doesn't address the issue.
Sure.
I agree with
And
you.
and so now, and let me just agree with you, Marlene, on something. When we speak of pornography,
Hold on, wait, 1 second. Hold
Let's
on.
take note of this.
Hold
What
on.
Can I
time
have
is
the
it
organ?
today?
Can I have the organ, please?
It was coming.
mark this day down. I mean, but when we speak of pornography, what we're talking about is the institutionalized economic
Yes.
exploitation of human sexuality
Yeah.
for the purpose of abusing and exploiting other human beings.
Sure.
It is the merchandising
Yes.
of individuals. And when we're talking about that, I not only do I think it's not even whether it's a sin or not, I think it's evil.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes.
evil.
Yes.
But when you get beyond that, and you talk about, for example, somebody has a picture of another young lady in a bathing suit, and they are fetishizing that picture, I think what that needs to be looked at from a different
Right.
perspective.
I agree.
Because as children, we are sexually curious.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
And we
And I'm not
associate a lot
calling
of our
that
own
pornography.
empowerment
Yeah.
through whether or not we can attract other people sexually. And we have to understand what that means and
Yeah.
why.
And I
And I have
agree
to
with
say,
you there. I'm
Wait a minute.
saying
Hold on,
Hold on.
hold
when
on.
you
Hold on.
I agree with Tally a lot. Don't act like that.
going on.
Don't act like that. This is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Peace and harmony. My point is, guys, when pornography is when you feed it, you are pornography. Listen, the effects of
I
pornography
mean,
is an
addiction.
addiction. When you are out of control and you thirst for that. It's not just I see that. Oh, it make me feel. You know how us women, you can really like somebody, you touch. Oh, I felt something, right?
No,
That's
I
a
don't know about that.
natural.
Tell me more about that,
Yeah,
Marlene.
go explain.
I'm not gonna
Explain.
expound on that.
No,
Me and
no,
Don't
Tasha
tell
knows
me
what that's
stuff.
about. We know what
I
that's
do.
about. But anyway,
We got you.
but listen, when you feed it's an addiction. That's why it destroys marriages, because it's now the escalation of sexual behavior that I can't even please you with. You need more than me. You want this. You have become married to this for your sexual desire versus me.
Marlena,
So
can we back up? Can we just back up to when you began and you started talking about dopamine?
yes,
The
Yes.
chemical.
yes,
You know, when you talk about this addiction, it's not necessarily what they want to see anymore. It's how they want to feel.
correct.
Right.
And so when you look at children, you know, we should be talking the same way when we talk about 11 and 12-year-olds that's on heroin. Do you understand what I'm saying? And there are drug dealers out there. Tally, there are producers out there. The porn industry is larger in financing more than the NFL that's played on Mondays, Sundays, and Thursday nights, right? So when this thing comes in, it is the feeling that they're trying to get, which switches from a sexual feeling to now a mental
Well, it's always a mental feeling.
yes, Tally, it is.
Yeah, the greatest sex organ in your And your
it's your
organism is
brain.
your brain. Yeah.
Definitely. And I get that. And that's the reason why, because you mentioned voyeurism, you mentioned there's so many things that come with this that we can't even get through this on a in our 3-hour show. It is something from the beginning of time that when Eve looked upon, or Adam looked upon, right through the Bible, we're talking about looked upon. Something is happening in the brain that says it makes me feel good, therefore I'm going to do it. You understand what I'm saying? Or I'm going to go. So when you look at a kid who has a cell phone, who doesn't have to go, they don't have to go tally. When we were growing up, these guys are young. When we were growing up, we had to go to the corner store, or
you had to go to the red light district,
or to the red light
Oh,
district,
no.
or to the Deuce. No, really, you got to go to 40 Deuce to see all these things in New York City. The thing is that now it's ready and accessible.
It comes to you now.
And
Absolutely.
the secrecy,
Traces you.
and I think
And
you
in
wrote us
secret,
on it, Marlena. The secrecy part of it keeps it going, keeps it running. So our children will be able to hide in a corner, would be able to get up at 11, 12 o'clock at night, or whatever the case may be, and we will never know what's going on till it increases. That dopamine will keep running, where they become addicted to it.
And the other thing too, as a parent of 2 daughters, it's scary sometimes when you're hearing this and you see all
Pretty
the access
daughters.
that they have. It's and
You have to add that.
I was like, okay, how do I make sure they don't see this? And when they go here, how do I make sure they don't expose them to this? And it's like I was just driving myself crazy with trying to find ways to protect them from the things out there. And then one day I just said to myself, why are you trying to protect them more than you're trying to educate them?
Yeah.
So now my approach is, let me teach them what's right.
Yep.
So when they go out, because I can't, no matter how much I try, I cannot control 100% what my children will be exposed
That's
to.
true.
I don't know who they're
Absolutely.
sitting beside right now at school
Right
who
now.
has something in their book bag.
Easy.
So the only
Absolutely.
thing I can do to counteract that is to make sure that I teach
Hold-
them what's
hold up.
appropriate.
Tasha's
Are
kids
you
are doing
calling
what?
God?
Yeah.
No, we got to report on Tasha's kids right now.
I thought he was calling God on you. But
Yeah.
what I do want to say, guys, and the reason, because I certainly don't believe in teaching the kids judgment, but the grace of God. I strong all people. But when I say this pornography thing is stronger than we think, it is an evil that when I say I call it a sin because it leads to volatile things. When we're talking about, studies show it leads to rape and incest, molestation, violence with women. We've got some of our young guys that don't know how to treat girls because they see these pics and this is how I can treat you to get my arousal, and they think that that is normal. And so education is important. It is very important. And we have to tell them that listen, it's a evil that leads to these kinds of things. And that's why we hide out, because it is a feeling of shame before you even expose yourself to anyone. You already feel shame. So you do it behind the scenes.
Sure. I sense that in this case that we got to be careful, because I think that the pornography is more symptomatic than causative. All throughout the Bible, we find women being horribly mistreated. And I don't think any of the folks in the Bible had a cell phone through which they were viewing pornography. I mean, and so the pornography is symptomatic of our errant desires and our deep emptiness that causes us to crave things that exploit our need for connection, which is what pornography is really based on, exploiting our need for connection. And we have agreed 3 times, ladies and gentlemen, let this show go down in the annals of human history.
You speaking
pornography,
brother? You speaking good today. That's all I've got to say. You're doing well.
I mean, in closing, I mean, for me, as
He's closing my show.
I'm giving my closing remark. Now I forgot what I was going to say. But,
go right ahead, my friend. Go ahead.
No, it's just I sense that we have to, as people of the book and people who are more connected to judgment let's be honest now. Adventists,
True.
we're
That
very
is true.
judgment heavy. That
Yeah,
we
we
have to
lead with
back
that.
away from that so that we can become educational. And last but not least, many people listening say it's the parents that need to teach their children about their sexuality. We need to be taught that in the home. Let me offer something to lay alongside that. I don't think there's anybody here who says our parents need to teach our children how to do algebra, or our parents need to, the parents need to teach our children how to do. Sometimes we need educators to come along and to assist where parents may not necessarily have the skills.
Right.
And sometimes objective education might even be better. So we need to employ people at times to help our children to learn what they need to learn.
Ted, you said that, and I agree with that. But there's some parents who are very uncomfortable with that. They're very uncomfortable with
Yeah, then they
teachers
shouldn't do
out.
it. Yeah, they shouldn't do it. But I'm simply saying that just as if my child develops an intense pain in the lower right section of their abdomen where their appendix can be inflamed, I'm not going to say, you know what, as a parent, I need to take this out. I'm going to go to a professional who is able to do what needs to be done for my child.
Right.
And sometimes education is better, supported by the parent.
Right.
Rather than trying, to do what a parent, because all parents are not great teachers and all parents don't understand.
Right. They may not have been taught to be
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
explain it. Yeah.
So,
And everybody feels this tabooish, it's sinful to talk about sexual desires and sexual intimacy.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know why that is, when it's clearly given by God. It's wrong when it's not between the husband and the wife. So you want to teach your children what to beware of, what to protect themselves from, because the devil is, like what was stated, it's not just available for them, it chases after them. When you just get these pop-ups, children are curious. We're curious. What is that? And so we have to help them. And even though we teach our children, Tosh, they still may go contrary to the teaching.
Right.
That's why we cannot, you can't protect them from everything. You can only pray and guide them as much as you can. Then the decisions are left unto them. Guys, there's so much more to say. I agree with part 2, because we have not gone into all of the effects that it has on the children and their minds, their mental ability. We haven't even touched that. And we really do want to spend a little time on how to avoid this, because there are ways to avoid and protect our children to the best of our ability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great topic. I know there's so much more, as you said, that we could cover on it. And I do want to say, if you don't know where to start as a parent, the first thing I would say, and this is something that I have to say I'm learning from my husband, who deals with children who have all these kinds of issues that come to him for therapy. He always says, lead with validation, lead with creating a space where people can talk freely without judgment. So, start opening up those lines of communication with your children so that they know they can talk to you about what they're feeling without thinking that you're going to, shame them or throw the book at them. We have to start creating those spaces for our children, because if they don't have those spaces at home or even in the church, we leave them to the world to teach them these things, and we just can't allow that. So I would just say, let's work on creating those safe places for our children to talk about how they're feeling, regardless of how we feel or how uncomfortable. Because let me tell you, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. You said it, Marlena, but one of the reasons it's hard for us as parents is because, for me, I don't want my children to ever lose their innocence. You know what I mean? And so when you have to like cross over into that part where you're educating them about things, you're like, my baby, they're not babies anymore. It's hard. But if we don't do it,
see, Tasha's daughter be going off to the honeymoon. Tasha be in the back seat of the car.
Yep.
And sometimes the children are embarrassed. Y'all know I was a single parent. I said, I'm going to, the doctor said, talk to your children. I'm talking to my boys. And we were riding in the car one day, and they looked at me, and this was their response. Well, you can't talk to us about that. They just start dying. I said,
Well, it's
guys,
like
it's
the,
life. They couldn't even
Yeah,
take
you
it.
had to normalize it for them. Yeah, because it is
they
weird
couldn't.
and awkward at first. Yeah.
it's like
And
when
I
Pat
think
went to talk to his son about sex and said, "Son, I want to talk to I want to speak to you about sex." And the son said, "Well, sure, Dad. What do you need to know?"
You laughing? You're right about that.
well, I was just
Go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I had to drop out
Well,
there and
sure,
come back.
man.
But I just wanted to end by saying that in the whole education piece and the part of, sitting down with young people, I think the narrative should be the same. So if the narrative is one way in your home, it should be the same from the church environment and from the educational environment. And if you're in a church school, I think that our kids should not come home and say, "Well, that's not what they told me. They told me this, or I heard that." So, if as a community, as a village, we can all have the same narrative when it comes to educating our children, about sex and pornography, then they're getting it from more than one source.
Consistent message. All right. Well, I applaud you, Marlena, for leading us
Yes.
and this great discussion, necessary discussion. I should say.
Yeah, great job, Marlena.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. For our
And we
children.
Baby approved.
Want to clap? Want to clap for Dr. Marlena?
Yeah. She's like, thank you for caring about us. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
I love it. I
We
love
got
it.
to protect these kids. We got to.
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
This is our future now. All right, guys. Well, it's been another great show. We look forward to reading your comments and what you have to say about the subject. Of course, if you want to email us, if there's something else you want to see us cover in a future episode, please email us at upset@aecsda.com. We love hearing from you, and we look forward to what you have to say. And we hope that you're enjoying your Labor Day weekend or whenever you're watching this, maybe on the playback. But just know, the Upset family, we love you, we care about you, and we can't wait to see you next week. All right, guys.
Bye,
Until
family.
next time.
Bye-bye.
Peace out, everybody.